Oh, more Arkham Horror goodness. And for most of you out there who have not paid attention to any Fantasy Flight article or even looked at the back of the box, let me give you a subtle hint as to what the theme of this cycle is going to be.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Perhaps you'd like to see how snake-like I can be.
I have my own subtle little ways.
What's wrong? Snake! Snake!
Hey everyone, welcome to another Broken Meeple review, and as quickly as I show you this box, it's gone. Because, let's face it, when you get one of these deluxe expansions for Arkham Horror LCG, you don't need the box anymore. Although you might want something to look at, so maybe I'll just pick that up again and bring it back. We'll chuck it away soon though. Because this is now the third deluxe expansion for Arkham Horror LCG, which has taken off like a storm basically. It started off well, it's just getting stronger and stronger as it goes along, I think. We've already had the base set, we've had the Dunwich Legacy, which I enjoyed. We've had the Carcosa cycle, you know, the Path to Carcosa with the... Because the Dunwich Legacy was basically the Dunwich Horror. Carcosa was basically Hastur, I believe his name is, you know, the book of... Is it the book in yellow or something like that? The yellow sign, but the yellow plate. I forget its name, but it's one that I do quite like the lore of. Anyway, oh yeah, the King in Yellow. There we go. Bit of a mind blank there. It's a piece of the Arkham Horror I like, and I really like that cycle as well. Well, now we got the third one, the Forgotten Age, and this one, well, I'll give you a tiny warning now. Minor spoiler alert. If you've been keeping up with Fantasy Flight articles, or you've even done a smidgen of research on this box, you know the gist of what the enemy is, who the Great Elder One is this time, and stuff like that. But if you have completely come like new to this cycle and you don't want to know anything about it before you take a look at the box, then I suggest turn off this video and come back at a later date. But for the rest of you, let's keep going. Yep, with this one, you are facing off against Yig. Well, at least you will be, presumably. Because this has got the biggest snake theme possible. Now, Yig is another Elder One that I actually quite like. I quite like the idea that it's not always just this weird entity with tentacles. You know, I like the fact that it's just, you know, a snake, almost like a snake god. You know, bear in mind my Arkham lore is not, you know, particularly strong. But I enjoyed Yig's, in fact, the Eldritch Horror expansion, the Yig one, the first one, I think Forsaken Lore or something. That's like one of my best expansions for that game. I really like the Yig enemies you come across, all these sort of, humanoid serpent creatures that poison you and, they're creepy, but they're not too scary for me, because I don't have a problem with snakes. You know, I'm more of a, don't like spiders type thing. But snakes, I'm quite cool, you know, we can have a boa constrictor around me and I wouldn't really care. Well, until it squeezes the life out of me anyway, but, you know, other than that, I'd just be going, oh, some cute little snake. I'd have no problem with snakes whatsoever. So here, you got snakes aplenty though. I mean, from a tiny little viper in a tree to, you know, the actual proper humanoid things with spears, you know, they're all in this. And you want to be nice to them, at least now and again. So, I'm not going to go into too much detail about the contents card-wise. If you want to look at the cards themselves, just go to arkhamdb.com. The whole card list is on there to date, as well as some very useful deck lists, which I like to use every now and again, because as much as I enjoy making my own deck every now and again, time permitting, it's more handy just to pick a decent deck tech from the website. Or you can just go to the Fantasy Flight website and get one of the starter deck recommendations. They're reasonable as well, but they are bare bones. You know, they use a core set and a deluxe expansion only, so all the previous cycle packs you've got, they won't take those into account. And chances are you'll start at Dunwich and move to this one rather than start with this one, but I don't know, maybe some of you are different. So with this one, you get the same as you've done before. You get 2 brand new scenarios, you get 5 new investigators, and a bunch of cards, you know, more to add to my collection in my folder and giant wooden box up there. Now, the investigators themselves, you know, clearly I have not played this with all 5 investigators, you know, how much time do you think I have? But I have started the campaign, I've gone through both scenarios now, and I'm using Ursula. Ursula is the seeker of this particular group, the orange cards, if that helps. And they're generally quite good at investigating. Well, Ursula is not only good at investigating, she's also pretty mobile. She and the cards that combo with her are able to give her some pretty good maneuverability and free bonus investigates every now and again. However, the downside is she can't fight for toffee. But yeah, this expansion is starting to bring in investigators that have 1 in stats. There aren't many of those that I recall, if any, from the previous expansions, but now you've actually got at least 3 with 1 or less on the stat line for certain traits. And in Ursula's case, she's 1 in fight. She can't fight for toffee. So you either need to get another player's deck who's better at that to partner with it. But in my case, I'm playing solo, so as I'm going through, I'm having to pretty much evade everything in sight. At least for the time being. We're working on... There are occasions when she can fight with the cards, but yeah, I have to be pretty stealthy, be pretty quick in the campaign, otherwise I just get overwhelmed by enemies. I also had a brief try with the new mystic, Father Matteo, basically a priest. Quite a famous character from the lore. There is a weird stick he has. He has some bonus XP when you start him off. And he also has a weird ability to be able to seal away like signs in conjunction with other cards, but he does some really weird stuff with the Elder Sign token, and some of his like combo cards allow you to potentially get the Elder Sign multiple times in a game without having to rely on too much luck. It's a really interesting character, and it's very different to have somebody have XP to begin the game with. Whether they did that as a balancing act, I don't know, but he makes for a very good solo investigator. The other 3 I have not tried, so I suggest going on to the Fantasy Flight or the Arkham DB website to find out more about them. But essentially, the new Guardian Investigator is a sort of leader bloke. He sucks at evasion, but he's pretty good at the whole, fighting and, fighting will, and not too bad at investigate either, but he just sucks at evading. So agility tests are going to hurt him. But he's a big ally lover, so if you've got plenty of allies, then and you like to use them with charisma, etc., then he's the one to go for. Finn, I'm a little bit concerned as to how you would use him that well. He's good at investigating, he's good at evading. Okay, he's a slippery devil. And he does have some, an interesting ability, to get like free evades. So yeah, enemies he can run away from. But you can only run away from enemies for so long before you eventually have to fight something. And he has a willpower of 1. Ouch. The encounter deck is just going to rip him asunder. So I'm curious as to how he gets around that, but, I've already used a rogue deck recently. I used Jenny Barnes for the first cycle, so I don't need, and I also used the artist, this Safina, for a 2-person, 2-handed game I was playing with the Carcosa cycle, so I'm kind of done with green and purple for the time being, really. And then there's the red dude, Calvin Wright. He's a very weird one. Now, I've never been particularly good at playing red decks anyway. I hear they're good, but the playstyle is something I'm not quite as familiar with, and therefore I don't go as mad for them. I'm just not as good with them. I prefer to play blue or purple most of the time. I'm not too bad with yellow as well. And yeah, he's weird. He starts off with 0 and everything, but he gets stronger as he gets more damage and horror put on him, so his stats boost. So you kind of want to damage him a bit, but not too much that he actually dies. It's kind of weird. I feel like he's like not a beginner player's like character. To be fair, I don't think red is a beginner factor, period. But people are taking him out. He's got some interesting combos, and he does get to use some of the weird cards from previous cycles, ones which like you to have low sanity and low physical stats. So yeah, he's got a use, but it'll probably be a while before I take him out and actually try him in a deck. So that's 5 investigators, and of course you get 2 scenarios, which I'm sure is the main thing that you want to know about. Well, I'm not going to spoil storyline aspects, I won't go into detail with that, because obviously you don't want to know that kind of stuff. You want to try it for yourself. So I'm just going to give you a kind of feel for how the scenarios felt. You get 2, and this follows a very jungle sort of relic discovering theme to it. Think Indiana Jones. That's probably the closest theme I can think of with this expansion, because your first scenario has you going into the jungle, encountering creatures and enemies, and trying to find a lost ruin, like Aztec ruins. And then the second scenario has you inside those ruins, trying to find the center of it, grab something and get out. It very much feels like Indiana Jones, Tomb Raider, all those styles of adventures that you know and love. In fact, I even played both scenarios with some jungle and tomb thematic music in the background for ambience, and it helped make the experience more enjoyable. Now, the new mechanics it's brought into this new system is mainly to do with two things. There's a couple of minor things for enemies and that, but the two main things are sealing and exploring. Sealing basically allows you to seal tokens from the Chaos Bag on a near permanent basis until maybe something releases them or you release them otherwise. Quite a nice way to get some of those horrible things like the skull and the cultist and the weird tentacle thing that comes out of there. So it's a nifty little trick, and the purple the priest, he's pretty good at dealing with those, and there's a couple of other items in there that are good with this as well. The explore mechanic is an interesting one. It's hit and miss with me. It basically involves you creating a little sub-deck each game, which is full of a few locations and a few treacheries. You explore as an action, you reveal the top card, and if it's a connecting location, you can move to it. If it's not, you keep going until you either get one or you get a treachery card, in which case your exploration fails, and you suffer the card as if you just drew it from the encounter deck. Now, there are ways you can mitigate that deck, but I find that that's quite... it's thematic to the game, but it is quite luck-driven. You can get completely shafted if you are, unlucky with that deck and you don't have the means to mitigate the luck with it. I had some times where I was just like, I must have come across every treachery in that deck before I even found the location I wanted. And it can hurt to get some of those treacheries in the face on a regular basis on top of the encounter deck. So, sometimes you might have a perfect game where you get exactly what you want and no bad stuff happens. So it's a bit lucky for my liking, but it's thematic and it fits with the whole you've gone into the jungle and you don't know what's there and you're just trying to move through it as best you can. So I like the theme. I just wish maybe there was more ways you could mitigate it, or maybe it was a little bit less lucky. But it's no big deal. It makes the scenarios challenging and a little bit punishing, but that's what this game is. It is quite punishing at times. Now, the first one has you going into the jungle. So you find jungle locations, you're getting clues to find your way through. You encounter tribes, you encounter snakes of all different types. And, it's a very good scenario, actually. The best thing is your starting setup, though. Now, this isn't too much of a spoiler. You'll find this in the instructions. But basically, you get to pick supplies. So you go on an expedition, and it's the 1920s, remember? So, you don't have, jeeps and tanks going through, like some of the Indiana Jones ones. No, you basically have your basic supplies, and you can only take so much with the funding. So you have so many supply points, and you can pick things like a canteen, a, jug of water, basically, a blanket, provisions, medicine, a compass, chalk, map, all these weird items that you would take on an expedition. You spend the points before you even start the mission, and frequently on certain story cards, and even in the interludes, the resolution storylines, if you have certain items, you get this either bonus, or you avoid a penalty, or you get the chance to do some weird action. It's a really cool system, and each one feels thematic when you come across it, and you just don't see it coming. I chose a selection of items, and I'm thinking, come on, when are they going to be useful? And then suddenly it comes up, and it's like, that's cool. Glad I took that then, good thinking. And then you hate yourself for not picking a certain item because you suffer the penalty for it. It's a really cool concept, and I really like it. I'm probably only going to like it the once, though. Sort of. Because, like with all these, once you've played through a scenario, you know what's going to happen, so you know the plot. Well, you also have come across the cards in the interludes that say what you get for certain items. Now, you can't take everything, so some stuff you're going to have to suffer, period. But there's a couple there where I'm thinking, yeah, you know what, I wouldn't have actually minded just suffering that little negative if it meant I could have taken that instead, which would have been very good. So, I find that when you play through a second time, you're going to cherry pick your items a little bit differently. Or maybe you'll just randomize it, or maybe you'll just try some of the more challenging items, be thematic with who your character is. So it's a really cool system, and I want to see this come up in more of the cycle packs. But yeah, it's one of those things where you're going to really, really love it the first time, and then the second time you're kind of like, yeah, cool, but let me pick that, and that this time. So definitely has that first game, factor to it. So the first scenario works pretty well. You can get past it whether you're combat or not. There's ways to get around it. And then finally you get into the second scenario, which actually involves going into the ruins, grabbing something and coming out. This one is definitely a race against time. And I mean a real race. Doom is just coming out onto locations like nobody's business, and you only have 2 agendas to go through. And even though you get a little bit of an agenda threshold increase by player count, it's still not a lot when there's a lot of cards in the deck and a lot of effects which put Doom onto locations. And they don't get removed when the agenda flips. So whatever you've put on in the first flip, the locations ones stay on. So suddenly you've got even less time for the second part. And you can't afford to sort of lose, because you've bad things. You can potentially die with the you can potentially die in the second scenario, after, depending on resolutions, depending on how you were defeated, that kind of thing. But normally that sort of stuff is safe for the latter part of the cycles. Here, depending on how badly things go, you could actually be killed in the second scenario of the campaign. Fair enough, I quite like that, because it means that if you do, you can just reset and go again from an earlier point. It's much better than getting 5 or 6 cycles in and it's like, oh god, now I died. But yeah, it keeps the tension up. It's very much a tomb dwelling thing. You've got to explore again, so you've got to explore the underground locations, and then it has a very cool shifting around of locations. I won't spoil any more than that, but it has a cool twist in the third act, which took me a little bit by surprise, because I had a bit of a plan going, that's okay, I've got to evade these enemies, they're going to follow me, that's good, they'll follow me there, I'll grab this, get out, don't wait, I can sneak past them. Then something happened, it's like, uh-oh. So I had to rethink my strategy, take a few hits to the head, chest, knees, kneecap, whatever, in order to get out. So I kind of had to run past a ton of enemies and just go, ow, that hurt. But at least I was able to get out, and I successfully completed both scenarios, albeit by the skin of my teeth. So, all in all, it's a decent scenario, but it feels shorter than the first one, and it feels quite punishing depending on the cards, and you definitely need to be able to investigate the clues. I mean, if you suck at investigating in these 2 scenarios, you're going to struggle, period. But then, of course, a lot of enemies can come out, so you definitely want a balance of the 2. If you're playing 2-handed and you have 1 fighter and 1 investigator, 1 investigate heavy decks, then they will gel together very nicely with this campaign. But all in all, I like both scenarios. I think the jungle first one was better than the second one, but I still enjoyed both. I would certainly find myself repeating the jungle one every now and again, possibly the temple one, but of course, I have my campaign log. Yeah, I keep forgetting to print the thing out of the rulebook or the PDF sorry. So at the moment my campaign log is literally a notepad until I do that. But I've enjoyed this expansion so far. I think they're really upping the theme. I think the artwork is still sublime as usual. And I think if they can keep up this whole supply expedition thing and all these cool story choices, because there's a lot of story choices. I've written a ton on that campaign log already, and we've barely started. So there's a lot of branching paths, a lot of ways you can approach it, as every good Arkham Horror LCG cycle should be. So definitely a thumbs up for me. I feel that maybe it's not one for beginners. If you're just starting out, I would suggest maybe you want to start with one of the earlier ones first, because these investigators are not beginner investigators. The fact that half of them have, 1 stats, or 0 even, and have to build up, means they're not beginner friendly. But if you've been in this game for a long enough time, you'll be pretty comfortable with this. So, in terms of this one, it's another solid expansion, a great start, and, minus that 1 MacGuffin that I mentioned earlier, I still think really solid and definitely worth your time. So, all in all, personally, I think this is probably my favourite of the deluxes so far. I like it better than the Carcosa one, and I definitely like it an essence more than the Dunwich one. The Dunwich deluxe expansion was actually pretty good, I have to admit. This one, though, is a very good one as well. Giving it personally, I'd give it a 9. It's solid. If you like Arkham Horror LCG, you've already got this anyway. What are you listening to me for? But if you're new to the game, I suggest start off with an earlier cycle, progress onto this one, Trust me, it'll be worth the journey. So that's it for me for another review. I'll see you on the next one, assuming that Yig hasn't decided to seek vengeance against me, which he may well do. So, see you next time. Take care.